Aloha everyone, and welcome back to another video.
Hi, I'm Nikki.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome to our unsettled journey.
In today's video, we are going to be sitting down and helping you decide which Hawaiian island is best for you to visit. Whether you're visiting with your family, with your significant other, whether you're planning your honeymoon or just want to travel solo, we've got some information that's really good to know before you plan your visit to Hawaii, since for us here in the mainland of the US, it is a big haul to get over to Hawaii, so we've got some information for you that might help you make the best decision if you're planning a trip out to Hawaii.
So now if you're located on the East Coast, we recommend that you break the trip up since it is quite a long flight out there in the first place. And when we mean break it up is we mean to take the 6-hour flight out to the West Coast and stop somewhere and do an overnight in a city along the West Coast. We prefer some cities such as Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco. A lot of the California places, if you have not been there, are really great to do a layover. And then the next day, you just wake up and then you go on over and take the remaining portion of that 6-hour flight on over to Hawaii.
Matt and I are both from Pennsylvania, so the few times that we've actually flown out there, we did break up the trip, and it's really nice because Hawaii is a 6-hour difference than the East Coast time zone. So when you break it up by traveling 3 time zones to the California coast and then flying essentially halfway to get used to the other 3 time zones, it does kind of help your body adjust a little bit better rather than doing it all in one sitting.
And it also goes for the way back as well. However, if you really want to, I mean, we're not telling you what to do here, but if you just really want to do it all in one time, by all means go for it.
One thing to note about flying to and from Hawaii from the East Coast is that since it is a 6-hour difference, if you're flying out there, you're gaining all that time, so you will arrive essentially the same day that you leave. Let's say you decide to leave on March the 1st, you will get there on March the 1st. However, when you return, because you're losing all the time zones, you are going to have to take an overnight flight at some point through your journey. So when you are planning your trip, make sure you know exactly the date that you have to be back, because you're technically going to have to leave Hawaii the day before you have to get back, because all those time zones you're losing, therefore making it into an overnight flight at some point.
So now if you're thinking about booking a trip to Hawaii, which island is best for you? So we have made a list of the key differences between the main islands that a lot of tourists go to and visit, so we can help better break down which island is best fitted for you.
So if it's your first time out to Hawaii, you may think that you have 8 different options for visiting Hawaii, as there are 8 inhabited islands. However, visitors are really only welcome at 4 of those 8 islands.
So now of those 4 islands, you can visit the Big Island, Oahu, Maui, and even Kauai.
So the first island that we're going to dive into is probably the most popular and famous of them all. It is the island of Oahu, where Honolulu is located.
Now, thankfully, both of us were able to visit the island of Oahu, and we really have gotten to know what that island is about and what it's like to go visit there. So now right off the bat, this is a very family-centered and very touristy island. There's lots of different things to do, so if you're into things such as history of the island, such as you can go visit the Pearl Harbor exhibit and museum, as well as you can do lots of shopping down in Waikiki. They have a main strip that has tons of different shops, and even you can watch some surfers along the beach, and it's just a wonderful place to relax and enjoy yourself and your family or whoever you want to go with. However, this is a big city. The city of Honolulu is unlike what you would think when you think of Hawaii, because it is really built up. It is not as scenic as you would expect, and there's also a lot of different people there, so it's not as quiet. So just keep that in mind if you go there. But the benefit of being a city is that you really don't need to necessarily rent a car when you're there, as there are various different transportation options that you can take to get around the city. However, they do not extend throughout the whole island, so you will be located within that city area. But the island itself is very beautiful. If you do want to rent a car, you can go out to the North Shore, which is really famous for its surfing, as well as visit and see some of the unique waterfalls there, as well as Hananuma Bay and the Diamond Head Crater. There's just so much to do there, and what we did when we were there is we took the trolley systems that they had. Now that it's very geared towards the touristy sort of side of things, but it is a really great way to see the island because it takes you around the city as well as to those famous tourist attractions. Of course, the biggest place to stay would be the Disney Resort, as well as the Hilton Hawaiian Village. However, the Disney Resort, unlike the Hilton Hawaiian Village, it is located on the opposite side of the island, so you will have to take transportation there. However, if you want to stay in that other part of the island away from the busyness of the city, so those are just some of the things there that we would recommend doing in Oahu.
The next island we're going to talk about is the island of Maui. Now, Maui is going to be more laid back and more relaxed than the island of Oahu. And Maui is often known as honeymooners paradise, and it's really a place for couples and relaxing and getting that true Hawaiian paradise feel. While you won't be surrounded by a major city, there is still a ton to do on Maui. So a few videos ago, we showed you some of our favorite road trips, and there we talked about the road to Hana, which is on Maui. So if you haven't seen that video, you can go check that out. Also on our channel, it was the top 10 road trips we'd recommend. The road to Hana is a really awesome day trip that you can do by renting a car or even a motorcycle, since Hawaii's weather is beautiful all year round. If you are able to drive a motorcycle, some people would recommend that. But driving through the various towns and sightseeing through many waterfalls on the road to Hana is on many people's bucket list. The Ka'anapali beach area is where some of those amazing resorts are going to be, so if you're looking to have a perfect stay, that's where you're going to want to look. The island also has the Haleakala Crater and National Park, which some people would say is probably the best sunrise ever. Now, the crater does take a few hours to get up and back since it's so large, but if you're up for the challenge, getting up there for the sunrise is truly something amazing that everybody should experience.
So moving on to the next island, which is Kauai, which is known as the Garden Isle. And there's definitely a reason why it is called the Garden Isle, due to the fact that it's very, very lush. And in fact, it gets up to 450 inches and even more per year. So throughout the island, there are various different nature features, such as the Waimea Canyon, which is a very, very long canyon. There are several different waterfalls, as well as you can also do a helicopter tour. It is known for being the helicopter tour island due to the vast differences and fauna and such throughout the island. And the island is so famous for its natural features. In fact, several different movies have been filmed there, such as Jurassic Park, Pirates of the Caribbean, and even King Kong. So if you're into nature, we definitely recommend hitting up Kauai, as it's very, very lush and scenic. And you can do several different hikes. There's countless hikes throughout the island. We highly recommend going there if you're into nature.
Moving on to Hawaii Island, better known as the Big Island of Hawaii. This is the largest by far. In fact, if you had the chance to drive around the circumference of the island, it would take about 8 hours, and that's without really any stops. So it definitely is a big island, and the unique thing about the Big Island is it has some unique landscapes, unlike the other islands. So to the west you have the Kona coast, which gets over 80% of the days there are sunny, so you always have excellent weather over on the Kona coast, and it's got kind of a rugged, dry, volcanic landscape, which is really interesting, especially when you think of Hawaii. Now, there are some beaches there, but a lot of it is kind of a rocky coast. I had the chance to stay at the Hilton property over there on the Kona coast, and we didn't really have a proper beach. They had a man-made lagoon with sand in the center of the property and plenty of pools to keep yourself busy, but it isn't that typical beach that you would think of when you think of Hawaii in general. So now to the east you have Hilo, which, like Kauai, gets a ton of rain each year, and it's probably the wettest spot on the Big Island and one of the wettest cities in all of the United States. However, Hilo does have some awesome features. Near there are plenty of waterfalls, and you will also be right near Volcanoes National Park. So for people who love visiting the parks, especially want to see such a unique one because you can walk through lava tubes and see active volcanoes, that's definitely a part of the island that is really awesome to see. Now, traveling from Kona to Hilo doesn't take the full 8 hours. It's going to be roughly between 3 and 4 hours depending on how fast you drive and how often you stop, but it is doable for the day. And let's not forget about something that Hawaii is famous for that's not often talked about. It's their Kona coffee. So of course, over on the dry or Kona side of the island, you will have an opportunity to visit the Kona factory. There's also going to be those delicious Mauna Loa macadamia nuts. They have their visitor center and factory there on the Big Island. So if you love those sweet treats when you're out there visiting the islands, that's an awesome place to visit, especially if you're traveling with family members and want something educational to do or see.
So now, since you're making the long haul out to Hawaii, why would you visit one island when you can visit multiple islands? So now, if you're wondering about the transportation going between islands. There are several different ways that you can visit them throughout your trip. Now, if you decide to go on a cruise that goes to all the different islands, however, your trips may be limited to what you can do on certain days. But if you decide to go out there on a flight yourself, you can actually travel between the islands. The only way to travel between the islands, no, you cannot take a boat between the islands. The only way to do it is between the inter-island flights. So yes, you would have to go through the airport, and you'll probably take a much smaller plane just to get between the islands. But nonetheless, they're really, really close, short flights. So you can even make day trips of it, or even several days. You can go between islands and then come back to the main one, and then leave right out of the one that you came in at. However you want to do it, nonetheless, you can get between these islands. But just keep in mind, it is not as easy as you may think it to be.
There are tour operators that will do day trips that include the inter-island flights, so expect to pay a few $100s for that. Of course, it isn't going to be the cheapest day trip, but you can go over to one of the islands for a full day trip and then return that very same day. Something to note on the cruises is there's really only one cruise that solely does the Hawaiian Islands. It's the Norwegians' Pride of America. They're home-based in Honolulu and just travel between the 4 major islands. If you're taking another cruise line to Hawaii, expect to be there for at least 2 weeks, as you're either having to sail from Australia or from mainland USA and then hit an international port on your way back. So you're spending a few weeks. So if you don't have that amount of time but want to consider still a cruise, I would definitely go with the Norwegians' Pride of America, because they're the only ones that are really licensed to sail only Hawaii. Now, while we really think that there isn't a bad island in Hawaii to visit, you can definitely take some of these things and realize that some are geared better towards different people. For example, for families, we would choose most likely Oahu, not only because they have the Disney resort, but they also have the most to do, and they're also, considering for the other islands, they're the most affordable. So if you're traveling out with a family, we would recommend you visit Oahu.
Now for the couples, we would definitely recommend going to Maui, as it is more geared to the resorts, couples resorts, things to do for them.
If you're adventurous, we would probably recommend either Kauai or the Big Island. Kauai obviously has some of those awesome adventurous type things like helicopter tours. They have a lazy river that was kind of made out of an old sugar irrigation ditch, and we've seen it on different social media platforms where you can actually ride through that ditch on inner tubes, so that would be up for an awesome adventure. Or choosing the different landscapes on the Big Island with the national park and the Kona coastline.
However, no matter which islands you may choose, they're always going to all have waterfalls and cultural exhibits, and of course the luaus.
So we hope our recommendations today will help you to choose that perfect trip to Hawaii, to help narrow down which island is best for you to visit.
If you like traveling, just like the two of us, we highly recommend that you go subscribe to our channel and hit that bell notification to get notified about future travel advice, future travel adventures, whatever it may be. We really like to travel, so we hope to take you along on our journey.
Mahalo everybody, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!